Hello everyone, my name is Jason Hammond, and today we're going to be talking about extending your quality management with DevSuite. Specifically, we're going to talk about the benefits of using DevSuite for quality management, requirements traceability, test planning and execution. We're also going to be showing our new integration with ranorex, a test automation tool, and our third-party defect tracking integration. And I'm going to be doing all of the demo today using DevSuite 9.5.1, which is our latest release, which is available on our download site. It was put up last week. And so there's a lot of new features in that too, that as I go through the demonstration, I will be highlighting new features too. So if you are an existing customer that may already be familiar with DevSuite and using it for quality management, you will get to see some of the nice new things that are in the latest release too. So before we actually go into the demonstration itself, I want to just cover some highlights of overall the benefits you can get from using DevSuite for quality management, specifically traceability benefits, and how that traceability is seen in DevSuite. So requirements traceability, which is basically the idea of linking your requirements to test cases and defects and other development items, allows you to ensure that what you are creating or building or modifying actually matches what you set out to do. So by defining your requirements, creating your test cases from those requirements, and then tracking the implementation of them and the validation of them, you're able to see which requirements have not been tested or implemented. You're also able to easily see the impacts of changes in terms of if a requirement changes, you'll be able to see which test cases and development items will be impacted. And it also will make your testing more efficient too. Instead of testing things that might not be part of your requirements in your plan, you can ensure that everything that you are testing is mapped back to one of those requirements. And what I will show you today in the demonstration is exactly how you create your requirements in DevSuite, transform them into test cases, plan your test plans using those requirements, and then execute those test cases, log bugs, and then see the results in a traceability matrix. And then, of course, along the way, we'll also hit those new features too. So within DevSuite, just as I just mentioned, we're going to show linking requirements to tests, test planning, execution, requirements traceability, and the traceability reporting that goes along with that. This webinar is being recorded. We normally have them back up on our website in a day or two. And then also on the right, you may notice that there is a questions panel that you can utilize to ask questions during the webinar. So if you do have a question about anything that we cover today or anything we don't cover today, feel free to add that in the question dialogue, and at the end of the webinar, I will answer some of the questions. I'm planning to run about 30 minutes today in terms of content and questions also. All right, so now let's move on to the demonstration. So I've just upgraded to Windows 8, so I'm getting used to moving around, or Windows 10, I should say, sorry. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice with the latest version of DevSuite is we have updated the login page. The login page looks nicer and cleaner, and when I log in, especially if you have not seen 9.5, you'll notice a lot of differences. For one thing, when you log in, you can see each of your projects here, and each of those projects can now open as its own tab. If you have multiple DevTrack projects like I do, I can have two different tabs representing two different DevTrack projects side by side. I can also have multiple tabs on my dashboard so that I can easily see some reports if I want. And you may notice right away that some of the report interfaces have been improved. So in this case, I can look at this particular report, and we have changed all the reports in DevSuite 9.5.1 to be HTML5 based instead of Silverlight. So if you had any issues in any of the previous versions of DevSuite in terms of the reporting and Chrome and their support of Silverlight, now you should no longer have those issues. So let's start off by talking about requirements management. Creating requirements, how we use those requirements to create test cases, and then we'll move into the testing after that. Within our requirements view in DevSuite, which is from the product DevSpec, I can open up my list view and see my requirements organized in a tree structure of your choosing. Some of our users want to organize them by product releases like I have here. Sometimes if there's a lot of shared requirements that may cover many different product releases, you might organize them functionally or even by time period if you wanted to do that based on time frames for implementing items. Over to the right, I'm going to see the details of each of the requirements that I have in the area that I've highlighted, and then below, the additional specifics of them. For each requirement, I can see easily whether or not a test case has already been created for it. So I have a number of requirements here that do have linked test cases. And the nice thing is not only can I see that a test case is linked here already, but I can double click on it to view it if I want. But we're going to talk more about creating test cases from requirements in a minute after we talk about just the requirements view in general. Within the requirements view, I can also configure the fields to match any of the metadata that I want to track. Brand new to DevSpec in 9.5.1 is the ability to drag and drop attachments directly on the page. So I can minimize my window and drag files here too, one or more files to add attachments easily to the DevSpec UI. For each of my requirements, I have a number of tabs that will show me things like the history and the versioning, all the things you would typically expect to see in the tool. But also, so I can see the history, any changes that were made to that requirement, who created it, and everything about that requirement that I might need to know. But more importantly, I can also go to my All Links page to see how this requirement may relate to development items, whether they be bugs or test cases. And then I can expand these sections to view the exact details of what's going on. So if I want to see any open test cases and what their status is. So good news, this particular requirement does have a number of test cases, and they're assigned out, and we're waiting to see what the results are going to be. So also from this view, new to 9.5.1 is the ability to hide sections. So you may have, if you're familiar with DevSuite and you've used this before, you may have noticed there's a lot of sections here. Now those sections will only appear if you actually have data for them. So it'll present you with a more concise view of your All Links page. All right. So the creation of requirements is as easy as clicking on New and filling out the dialog. Once again, if you're new to 9.5, you may have noticed right after that I can create items in a new window. So a nice new feature of DevSuite 9.5 and above is that not only can I use, let me go back to here, not only can I use the description page and edit it inline here, but I can also open up a brand new tab and work on that too. And that applies to any of the items in the tool now, so including the reports. So now I can create a new requirement. So as I type this, you may notice another thing that's new in 9.5.1. We now have an indicator letting you know which fields have been modified. And also, if I leave this window without completing the form, it will warn me now too. So it is very convenient in UI in terms of being able to see which fields you've modified and changes you've made. And that way, you can make sure that you save them when you move on to the next item. And that's also present in DevTrack too. So I created a new requirement. At this point, I can create test cases from this requirement in a couple different ways. One, I can go to my all links page and create a new test case from it. But I'll show you in a minute that there's a more convenient way to create test cases from those requirements in our test view. But before I do that, I want to highlight a few other things about DevSpec before we move on. We do have the ability to import in your requirements from text, XML, or Excel. And we also have a Word add-in too that allows me to upload an entire document at once using the headers as the basis for creating some child requirements underneath the document or selecting sections of text to do that. All right, so now we've created some requirements. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to move on to our test library and create some test cases from them. So within my test library, and DevTest once again uses a tree to organize functionally or based on product your test cases, I can go ahead and create some new requirements from, or new test cases from those requirements. So let's do that. So I'm going to create a new folder just so it's very clear what I'm doing. So new requirements for webinar. And I'm going to just click on this button here, which says New Template from DevSpec. And what this is going to let me do is it's going to pull up my requirements view. So the same requirements view I saw before, I'm going to select sections of it, and then I can click Link. The process of just selecting the requirements themselves and clicking Link has not only created placeholder test cases for me for all those requirements, it's also formed a link between that requirement and that test case. So back in the requirements view, I can easily view that test case. I can click on the link to go directly to this test case to review it if I want. And more importantly, later when we create the traceability report, I've already established that relationship. So there's nothing more that I need to do other than utilize this test case in a test plan or log bugs against this test case. The traceability itself has already been established. So we've got the traceability out of the way in just a couple clicks. In DevTest, it will create a placeholder test case for me that will map over the title and the test procedure. And then I can fill out any additional details that I need to make this a valid test case in, our testing system. Maybe I want to provide a time estimate. DevTest can use time estimates to give you a sense for how long it takes to run your whole test plan. We can also link automation tests to this requirement. So later in this demo, I'll show you how I can actually go ahead and link a ranorex test script to this, or we also have APIs too that we'll talk about a little bit later also. So I'm going to fill out the details of the test case and save it, make sure that we have this test ready to use later when we create a test plan. Now one thing you may have noticed, if you're familiar with DevTest already, is that we have a new item in the folder tree. So with 951, I can easily see any linked development spaces that might be related to areas of the test library. What this allows me to do is easily jump to sections within a DevTrack project. So if I want to quickly review a list of bugs or that I need to create test cases from, I can do that. Of course, you can also look at that list of bugs and then create test cases from those too. So any of the bugs could also be used to create the test cases back in DevTest too. So once we've created our library of tests, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move on and create some test plans and assign them out. So I'm going to go to the DevTest work project. So DevTest is divided into two projects. We separate the test library from our test execution projects to make it easy for you to reuse your test cases, and also to share test cases with other teams that you might have. In this view, we're going to notice a couple things that are different. So first off, we have two trees. So in addition to having the tree that represents the library, we also have a tree that represents your test projects. So this is your test plan and your individual test cycles or test assignments that you hand out. Also in DevTest, we are able to show you a roll-up of the data that exists in those test plans. So this is their dashboard, similar to the dashboard you have on your homepage, but this is very specific to DevTest. It'll show you specifically a test plan or multiple test plans, and it will roll up all the data within that. So if I want to, right now I'm looking at my test automation area, I can look at all the automated tests I've run and see roll-ups by specific area, team, environment. So I can see how many we ran against Android, Firefox, and Chrome, and a non-applicable browser too. You can see that there. For my regular manual test cases, maybe I want to view them by team member, see how many have been executed by each person and what the results have been. So this dashboard will let you click on any place in this tree and this tree so I can drill down further. So I can look at everything that was in Content Sharing Manager 1, but I can just look at the business application tests too, or dig into just the client. And we can see that if I go new requirements for webinar, none have been assigned that day, which we'll do in just a second. Okay? The process of creating new test plans in DevTest is wizard-driven, and we do have some new things in the wizard that I do want to show you. So let's go ahead and create a new test plan. So I'm going to do a new test plan for Content Sharing Manager version 6. Now, one thing that we are going to be talking about in a minute is the new integration with JIRA. Our previous integration with JIRA, which is still supported, allowed you to select to submit bugs directly into JIRA, but we have a new improved way of integrating with JIRA that allows you to actually sync data between DevTrack and JIRA. Now, what that means for you is that you can utilize all the functionality that's built into our DevTest to DevTrack integration, but use it with JIRA also. So I'm going to show you how that integration works, the field mapping, and everything that goes along with that. So the next page of the wizard allows me to determine what team members are going to be part of my test plan. Next, we have a feature called environment variables. It's probably beyond the scope of the webinar today, but what it allows you to do is it allows you to, if you're running multiple, or you're testing multiple environments, maybe you need to test different browsers or OSs, for example, it allows DevTest to create multiple test cases for you from a single item in the library to make sure that you test all of the different platforms and browsers that you need to test. This also will work with our new automation integration too, so that for each of the environments or platforms that you select, you can also pick specific automation scripts and ranorex to run too. For now, I'm going to skip that feature, and we're going to go ahead and sign out some of that test coverage we already had. So we're going to do the new requirements from the webinar. Only one of the items that I created was updated in a status that said it was ready to be used. So let's grab some other ones too, just so we have a little more data to look at. And now I have created a test plan for Content Sharing Manager 6, and then I can create a test cycle just by running through that same wizard, except it'll be utilizing all of the same settings that we already looked at. Now, one thing that is new in 951 is we've added a new way to utilize the requirements and the implementation tracking in your test planning. So when I get to the coverage selection screen in DevTest, there's a new button up here that allows me to select coverage using specifications. So in this case, I can click on that button and I can view the subproject tree that's present in DevSpec, and I can select specifically the folders that I want to look at here. Or I can also choose to look at some development items too. So if you are also linking those requirements to implementation tasks, which is really the subject of another webinar. We often do webinars on agile development or specification-driven development. But the idea there is that you can also have your development team create implementation tasks from those requirements. You can also use that data as a basis for assigning it out too. So if you know, for example, the development team is on, let me find one that might be agile. So maybe they're working on Sprint 2. I can see which requirements are part of Sprint 2 and automatically pull the test cases that are related to these two requirements. So we can utilize that, or we can also utilize this and look for everything that's related to Content Sharing Manager too. In this case, I didn't have any tests there, but let's see, grab some other folders. And we can see that by utilizing the requirements tree, I can pull specific test cases in. The nice thing about this is, in addition to using this, I can then add another query related to defect data or test case data as a basis for assigning out my test coverage too. So it is additive. I can add additional queries and or even select some of those folders manually. And now when I click Finish, we're going to go ahead and create a test cycle that contains 3 test tasks to run. For your test team, when they want to execute these tests, and one thing I just realized is I didn't add that requirement that we wanted to add in, so let's do that. So the new requirement for the webinar, I think I missed that one, so let's add that in. So we just added some additional test coverage, and then we're going to go ahead and execute these tests. I can toggle back to a detail frame here. It's very easy to execute the tests. All I need to do is update the status button and click Save. In all of our products, at each of these workflow states, like the one I'm showing you here, you can have fields be mandatory or read-only. You can also control who can move items to particular states and what the next available state is. For testing, it's pretty basic in that I'm usually going to be able to go to all these end states. Sometimes you might have an additional layer to have multiple verifications of the same test case. But, for the most part, people are usually just moving them right to pass or fail. If I have a test that happens to fail, in this case I'm going to move this item to a fail state and click Save. DevTest can prompt me to submit a bug into DevTrack. Now using the new JIRA integration, this can go right into DevTrack and then automatically sync to JIRA. So if you do have users that use JIRA, maybe the development team you work with likes to use JIRA, you can continue to work in DevTest. You can submit bugs, map all the fields, and update them while they see the bugs in JIRA directly. In addition to creating a new defect, I could also search for existing items, or if a test has already has a linked item associated with it in this test plan, I would also see that by looking at this option. When I click Submit, it can map over any of the fields. So you can map over all the fields if you want, or in this case only a handful are mapped over. And then I can click Submit to log that. And now we have a new logged bug that was submitted there. And I can see that logged bug by going to the link defect page, and I can click on it to view it. So we can view that bug, update that bug later. If that bug's gone into any information that's updated from the developer on the JIRA site would also be present here too, using the two-way sync. So let's talk a little bit about automated test cases. So new to 951 is the ability to integrate with ranorex which is a test automation tool that allows you to test multiple platforms, create, record, and playback test automation scripts. I'm going to show this integration using our Windows client. It's currently available for our Windows client, and it will be out for the web client, fully out for the web client in the next month. But what this allows me to do is it allows me to, for any of the tests that I have in my test library, to click on the ranorex integration tab, and then I can link it to a ranorex script. So in this case, I can look for different ranorex suite names. Then I can look for a particular test and even a configuration. These configurations can also be associated with your environment variables too, if you have environment variables configured for a particular test case. So you can define specific configurations to run against specific environment variables. Once you have linked a test to ranorex, when that test is assigned out in a test cycle, you will have the option from the ranorex tab at the task level to execute that task, and it will return the log file, time, and also the status of the item. So you can actually launch multiple items at once by selecting multiples and right-clicking to run a batch execute. So in this case, you can see what the log has, and it has great detail in terms of showing you exactly what happened in the tool. We'll be having an upcoming webinar on ranorex where we will dig into the details of creating scripts and all the things you can do with that. But today I just wanted to point out that we do have this new integration, and it does allow you to link tests to scripts in ranorex. It allows you to execute them from the interface, and then all the data that's collected in DevTest with the linked script and the status and such is available for all the reporting that we already have in the tool. So you can leverage all the reports and everything else, but using the test automation data also. All right, so back to the dev test interface, and now I want to talk to you a little bit about our JIRA integration before we kind of follow up and summarize the whole demo and look at the reports. So new to DevSuite 9.5.1 is a two-way sync with JIRA. What the two-way sync with JIRA does is it allows users to transparently use DevTrack with JIRA. So some users using JIRA, some users using DevTrack, I can make changes to items in DevTrack and see them reflected back in JIRA. So, in JIRA I can see specifically an item that came over and was submitted from the DevTrack side. I can modify it and see it synced back to DevTrack. So, and as I sync all of this data, you can set up in the DevSuite admin the specific field mapping between DevTrack and JIRA. So, maybe JIRA has a field name that's different than one in DevTrack. No problem. You can map. You just decide how you want to map the data back and forth. You can also set up how frequently you want it to sync, and even which. So let's go back. Even which of the spaces here are syncing with JIRA. And you can even sync with more than one JIRA, based on a specific space that you were using. So in this case, I have a space. We are making those updates, and we can see, changes made back and forth between the two tools. So, and that's new to 9.5.1. Okay, so over the course of the demo, we have created some requirements. We have created test cases from those requirements. We have executed those tests, and we have submitted bugs. When I go back to my system and I look at my reports, I can do a traceability report that will allow me to see, specifically what we've done. So let's go to can't remember which project that was in. Okay. So what I want to show, and I think I picked the wrong subproject there, so let's look at another one. But what you can see is the ability to see all of your requirements and then decide what columns you want to see in terms of, so I can see for an individual requirement I may have, I can see the linked test case and the results of that test case. I can even add in another section that can include the development items. So if I want to see the linked development in there, I can add that in here also so that we can see, you know, any bugs that were also related to that test case. And then for each of those sections, you can decide, you know, so we can see the bugs that were logged from these particular test cases. In addition, so one requirement, many test cases, many bugs. So you can see all that data here too, and then for each of the sections, you can also configure exactly what fields you want. So the process of creating those requirements and then creating the test cases from them takes care of the traceability for you for each of those sections. So all you have to do is decide which items you want to see in the reports, and then you can go from there. In addition to that reporting, we also have a variety of other types of reports in DevTest to show you, and these would all include the ranorex data too and the JIRA data that is distinct from DevTrack. So I can easily see, for example, you know, by test cycle, how many items passed and failed, or see some data over time to see, you know, how we're doing in terms of by week, month, day, you know, how many items were completed or failed and such. And we could really spend a lot of time going over the reports too. But today I just wanted to highlight overall that relationship between the requirements and the test cases, creating that traceability and the benefits of it, and then also show you some of the new features that are in 9.5.1. I see that we have some questions, so I want to wrap up today by answering some of the questions that we have. And then we will go from there. Okay, so one of the first questions that we have is about the ranorex integration. Do we need to contact ranorex to purchase ranorex, or do you sell ranorex? So we are a reseller for ranorex, so if you did want to evaluate ranorex or purchase ranorex, you could talk to your account manager and they can refer you to help you download the software and provide you with a demo and such of that. So you can definitely take that. A question about the JIRA integration. It said, when you made the comment, let's pull this out a little bit. When you made the comment in DevTrack, in DevTest, it said it was from DevTest. Can you map the usernames? Yes. So there is username mapping between DevTrack and JIRA. So you just set it up in the admin. You can map the users there. You can map the item types and such. So all of that is configurable to two-way sync. Okay, so there's a question about the JIRA integration. Is there an easy way to click on a bug in DevTest and see the defect in JIRA? The way that the two-way sync integration works is you can't see the bug in JIRA itself. You would see the DevTrack version of it, but because you can map over all the fields, there shouldn't be data missing. That's certainly something that we can look to improve in terms of also providing a link in DevTrack to the specific JIRA item. But just like I showed before, when I'm in DevTest and I run a test case, from that all links page or from the link defect page, I can easily click on an item and view the details of it. And perhaps we'll add a linked item here showing you the direct link to the JIRA item too. But right now the idea is because they're both mapped, you can see all the data. There is a second way to integrate with JIRA from DevTest that doesn't use DevTrack as an intermediary, and that does provide you with a direct link here. But the one thing that integration does not do is it doesn't have two-way field mapping or syncing. So with that integration, I can always click on it to view the JIRA item, but I always have to click on it to get that information. Question, what is ranorex? Ranorex is an automation tool that is available from our partner ranorex, and we'll have another webinar that will show you more details about it in the coming months. Does the JIRA number show in DevTest? The JIRA number, if you use the old integration, the JIRA number will show in DevTest. If you are using the two-way sync with DevTrack, the DevTrack number will show. But the idea is you can map the JIRA ID to a field in DevTrack so that when I click on this, I can double click on it and see a field that says JIRA ID, and then you could even paste back a hyperlink to that JIRA item in one of the DevTrack fields if you want it, until we support a link as a feature. Okay, see if we have another question. Any more questions? We've had a few questions on the JIRA integration. If you're an existing customer or prospect and you'd like to know more about that integration, we'd be happy to provide you with an in-depth demo and show you how, not only how it works, but also show you the configuration of it. So just follow up with your tech-to-sell contact or account manager, and they can do that, or I will show you, get back to my presentation screen. And here's also my email address too, and I'd be happy to show you a demonstration of the JIRA integration too. Just feel free to email me or your account manager. So that's it for our webinar today. Thank you so much for spending time with us today to learn about quality management in DevSuite. And if you do have any questions, feel free to email me. Thanks a lot and have a great day.